first question of why do genealogy, I guess different people have different reasons. The black dots are sort of the general reasons given for why people do genealogy. There's an inherent curiosity about your origins, and one DNA test I did gives me my percentage of where I come from. Scottish 69%, 14% English, 13% Irish, and 4% Norway. Now, I suspect the Norway is probably could have been included in the Scottish because I suspect it's the Vikings that came over to Western Europe and left their seed behind. So beyond the inherent curiosity about your origin, everybody has myths as to stories about their ancestors. And that's what got my interest peaked. When I was a mere 12 years old, I bicycled over to my great uncle, and sitting by the edge of his garden, he started talking about his ancestors, and much to my utter dismay, he indicated that we weren't Scottish, we were actually English. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that story as I continue on. So basically, there's a number of myths that I've had over the years, and I'll mention some of them as I go on. Learning about your personal history, because actually genealogy is a subset of history. It's the history that your ancestors were directly involved with. And I go back as early as 1400s, but for all purposes, reliability starts at about 1600. And some of the stories that I picked up along the way is the story of John Hoare, who as a English immigrant attempted to save some praying Indians that were moved off the reserves once they were converted. He built a palisade for them to protect them from the whites, but unfortunately on one Sunday morning, the white militia invaded his palisade, and they were force marched to Deerfield, where about 50% of them died. Another set of stories that I always learned as I was growing up in Truro, Nova Scotia, was about my ancestors that came to Truro in the 1760s. The alleged witch stories is something that I discovered as I was researching my American ancestors, including slave owners. There were a couple that brought their slaves to Nova Scotia. On my mother's side, I went back to about 1485 with the finding of the Orange Order. And my early ancestors joined the Orange Order over in Ireland. And one of my grandparents coming to Ontario started the first Orange Order in Ontario. I'm not necessarily equally proud of all my ancestors, but basically the old expression, the truth will set you free. I think it's incumbent upon genealogists as they're doing their research to report both the good and the bad side. And the bad side sort of will encourage you to the view that we're constantly improving, because in terms of some of the culprits in my ancestors were a heck of a lot worse than my current ancestors, my current relatives. Finding ancestors and DNA matches is one of the latest interests of genealogists. Since when I attended the international meeting in Salt Lake City, I was introduced to the idea of DNA tests, and I was very interested at the time, but it took me another 5 years before I actually took tests, and incredible amount of interest in that area. And then just to top it off, once you get doing genealogy, you find it's like a crossword puzzle or other picture puzzles, and you just enjoy it for the sake of the completing of different stories. I'll just let somebody else in here. And also, one of the things that I found is that as you do genealogy, you meet people from around the world, and after a while, you start forming an international fellowship, so to speak. I can't see the bottom line, unfortunately, because of my tool things, but everybody has famous and infamous ancestors, and some of whom are well-to-do, others that are poor. Almost everyone has had the experience of being prosecuted by different religions, some more so than others. If any of you got into discussion with John Dahl, you'll find out some of his fascinating history in that area. The crux of the matter is, though, that we all have them. We don't always know about them. And basically, that's one of the things that you get when you start doing genealogy. Some people divide two terms, genealogy from family history. I'm not sure that there is the difference, but in any event, genealogy in a very narrow sense involves finding the descent of a family or your ancestors, getting the dates and places of birth, marriages, and death of your ancestors. The family history, on the other hand, involves this learning, putting meat on the stories behind your ancestors. And the middle definition is basically genealogy is actually the science of the organizing process. And after you get into genealogy, you find out that there are rules that increase the likelihood that you're going to have more accuracy in your story. Where to begin? You can get as involved as you want to. And the starting point for everyone, regardless of how involved you get, is starting to interview all of your known ancestors, starting with your parents if they're alive, your grandparents, and record the results on paper or in a software package. You get births, marriages, and death certificates, spelled wrong there. And this particular picture you have is of my software package. And with the one exception of McManus, I basically got almost all of the information from them just by asking my grandfather and father as much as they could, and mother. And I recorded the information initially starting on a Hilroy 5 or 10 cent scrapbook, and afterwards transferred it to a paperback book which had charts, and then about 5 or 10 years ago got a software package called Family Tree Maker, which provided not only the database storage, but also provided charts and other valuable tools, which I used as well. So start with what you know and work back. Once you've got all of the information that you can get from those that are living, and all of the birth certificates, marriage certificates, and things like that that you can find around the home or that are given to you, then you have to move beyond to collect additional information. And there are certain websites that are extremely valuable. You can pay for subscription services, but if you don't want to pay for them, you can get them locally through different sources. Family Search, which is the Mormon Church, is a free service, and it has an incredible amount of information. Ancestry, you can pay for a local Canadian branch, or you can get a world branch, or you can just go to the library and use the library's institutional copy. And it's incredible the amount of information that you can get from there. A couple of other database services that you can get, Find My Past and My Heritage, are available, but you have to make appointment with the local Family Search Center on Airport Road in order to use their free services. Or if you take out membership in a lot of provincial genealogy searches, you can get access to those at very, very minimal cost, $10, $25. And there's also some online trees such as Genie and WikiTree, which after you get about to your grandparents or your great-grandparents, those are also very valuable resources. Now, I'll just give you an example of a search at ancestry.com. As I indicated, it's also available at the Kenora Public Library. On the left-hand side is the search screen that will come up, and you'll put in certain information. For example, this is the John Retson. That was the story that indicated that I may have English ancestry behind my Scottish ancestry. And you have to put, you don't have to, but it helps if you have a birth year, or down below where you see add events such as birth, marriage, death, they lived in a certain place, or any information. As you put that information, it will decrease the amount of returns that you get. Once you get information, there will be a listing of a whole lot of John Retsons, but you have to interpret the results. For example, I put in a search for John Retson, who was born in 1809, and you'll notice that one of the screen results that came forward is a John Retson who was married in 1809. And you say it's kind of young to be married. So just because you get results, you have to interpret the results, because this particular John Retson might have been the one that was born in 1809. As it turns out, it was his father, who was also called John Retson, who was born in 1779. And as you get the information, you have to examine it and determine if, in fact, it's the same one. If you're familiar with the genealogy of Jesus Christ in the first chapter of Matthew's or in Luke, you'll find I just took down the first 6, and 4 of the 6 differed between the 2 versions. So in terms of if you get 2 John Retsons and different information, you know that they can't both be right. But even a clock that stops is right twice a day, so you have to examine it and through various increased information, determine which one is accurate and your John. This is an example of WikiTree, and sometime you can get incredible amount of information. This is the same John Retson that's there, these sites, if they're completed by somebody who's done a lot of research, will give you extensive information on their parents, their siblings, their children, sometimes lengthy bibliographies and extensive sources, and also the test results. For example, you'll notice that this particular one has my DNA, which was completed at 23andMe, as well as Family Tree DNA. And by clicking on that, you can get my results and go from there. So after the searching stage, you through Ancestry, Family Search, you'll collect as much information. Then you have to start entering the research stage, and you'll for each individual, you'll formulate questions. And the example I chose was, who was George Clifford Retson's father? You then have to determine various resources that might be available for them. Census data, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes, is an incredible good source of information. At earlier times, they don't indicate the relationship of the individuals, so that if you see a W.R. Retson at a certain age and a woman that may be his wife at a similar age, and 3 or 4 children that are at least 20 years younger, you can surmise that those might be the children, but you can't be sure. In later census, they'll actually give you what the relationships are. Once you collect that information, you have to examine the record and organize the results. And at the same time as you're organizing your results of the data that you found, you should also collect and organize the resources that you find, because you might go back time and time again to them. A good place to find resources that are available is found on the familysearch.org site. If you type that in, you'll come up with a map and a box which will ask you where exactly are you looking for. So here I filled in Nova Scotia, and they gave me a choice of Nova Scotia, Canada genealogy. I clicked on that, and it took me to this screen. And if you look at all these record types down here, if you click on any one of those, I don't know whether I dare, but I'll take a chance. If you click on, no, what happened there is it took me to the next screen. But on the actual website, if you click on any one of those, they'll take you to a detailed information base on how you can find different birth certificates. And one of the sources they will give you takes you to the Nova Scotia Vital Stats site. It's changed just very recently, but this will give you an example of a record that's found for George Clifford Retson, who was born in 1912. It will give you his father is William Retson, and I believe Beatrice Clifford was the mother. And so now you're one generation behind. And the next individual, W.R. Retson, if you go back and try to find him, you won't find him in Canada. So you have to start try to determine where he came from. Now, it just so happened that my grandfather lived till 1975. So he told me that he came over from Scotland at the turn of the century, and it wasn't too difficult with Ancestry to find the record of the ship that he came over. To the left side is the same website for Manitoba. Again, when you go in there, it will give you information as to the births and the years that you can get the births, marriage, and death certificates, up until 100 years ago for the births. So you have to find some other sources for later births. An alternative to storing your data in a software package, the software package Family Tree Maker, I think cost, when I bought it, I think it cost $35. It's probably more, somewhere between $50 and $100 now, but there's a number that are free, and you don't have to use those. For example, you could use a narrative report in a Word thing. For example, if you click on this site here, this will give a narrative of the Retson ancestry, which goes back to 1731. And one of the benefits of doing the narrative form is that you can concentrate on just one line at a time. And this is the ancestry line of the Retson family, which to date I have going back to 1731. Now, hopefully I can get right back to the PowerPoint. It costs nothing if you're using the Word, if you have already the word processor. And one of the benefits is that if you have people from around the world that are interested in your story, then you can send them this by email, or alternatively, you can put it on the web, on your website, which I do as well. The benefits of the software package is that it can produce beautiful charts and reports. For example, on the left-hand side, you'll see a pedigree chart for James Clifford Retson. This only has 4 generations. I have one that has 625 locations, and of those 625, I think I'm now around 600. Or you can produce, through the software package, you can produce outlined ancestry reports for your family. So this will take you back to the earliest ancestor that I've been able to find. My grandfather told me a story when I was a teenager about him coming from 5 generations of mole catchers over in Scotland and England. And I was dismayed to find out that the earliest spelling of our name was not R-E-T-S-O-N, but R-A-T-S-O-N. So I'm son of a rat rather than son of a ret, which is another, it's Latin for rich man. This is an example of a relationship chart of my earliest ancestors to North America. There was 3 that I had on that ship. 102 got on the ship, 2 died en route, and 50% died the first year. Fred indicates that one of his family myths is that he had ancestors on the Mayflower. And when he told me that story, I decided to research how many estimates of descendants are still alive on the Mayflower, and came upon a book in 1985 that at that time indicated there were 2 million descendants of the Mayflower passengers just in the United States alone. So that number in the United States has probably doubled since then, and around the world incredibly more so. So it's not as rare as you think it might be to have a Mayflower ancestor. As you get into ancestry, you find out that while it may be your early ancestors that came to North America, there were others that came earlier. For example, in Florida, there is St. Augustine, which had an active parish in 1585. Anyway, as I was indicating earlier, in addition to collecting the data, you should also collect where you got the source, which is citations, but also keep a track of different ones in general. So, for example, here shows you 2 websites that I use. The first one will give you a collection of different websites that I've used over the years. And the second one, the second one is another further elaboration of that. So in terms of Canadian census data is extremely valuable for finding out all of your Canadian ancestors. And if you go to this particular site, you'll see that I've got different sites that you can go to. For example, the Library of Canada holds extensive data back to about 1852 for all of Canada, and for certain parts of Canada going back even earlier, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Ontario and Quebec. Later on, you'll get automatic automated genealogy, which is an alternative source for data on census. Why is it important to get this? Well, if you happen to have a family that has 12 kids, then possibly you have 12 individuals that might have reference to their parents, either in their marriage certificates, their death certificates, or their marriage certificates. So that increases the likelihood that you'll be able to get back to the next generation. An alternative source for collecting these resources is a program that you can get free. Just Google Start Me, and it will give you the wherewithal where every time you're using a website, if you want to save it, you just go to the on the collection of websites at the top, you'll find one with the start page. Go in there, and then you start putting your the website in different locations. Extremely useful, and as I say, it's free. For $20, you get some benefits. For example, the $20 a year one will give you, you can start breaking them down. So if you choose any one of these, you'll get an equal number of websites that I've used in the past. In addition to the subscription sites during the last 20 years, DNA testing is the probably the second most exciting new technique for doing your genealogy. It can have some unpleasant surprises, as you've probably read about people that volunteered to do a DNA test for a friend or a relative to find additional information. Lo and behold, they find out that their father is not who they thought he was. It's also stories of criminals that have been caught. And if you're concerned that the criminals in your relatives are going to get caught, then you probably should restrict your access to your test. I'm not overly concerned about mine. But once you start doing your test, you'll get a list of various tests and suggested examples of what relationship they are. So the third one down, which I can't see who that is, but it suggests that it's my second to third cousin. The number of centimorgans, CM, will give you a rough guide as to what the relationship is, and you can normally get back 6 to 7 generations by these tests. And if you keep track of all of your siblings and all of your uncles and aunts and great uncles and aunts, then you can fairly quickly determine who these matches are. Once you have a fair number, then you can use other components of the DNA testing site. This one is one that's from Ancestry, and it's called Through Lines. And what this particular tool does is you combine the DNA results with all of the information that has been submitted to Ancestry. And if you click on any one of these names, you will get suggestions as to what a particular individual is. So, for example, I am, who I haven't shown the whole screen here because I haven't got this person's permission to show it to you, but this this linkage suggests that I am is my fourth cousin through a common ancestor of John Retson, who is again the 1809 John Retson. And this is extremely useful because as you're going back, you may have missed 2 or 3 of the siblings of these individuals.